So last night I saw the movie Megalopolis by Francis Ford Coppola, and this one was wild. Because while there's so much about this movie that I love and appreciate, like the blending of ancient Rome with modern New York and the hopefulness of the director's message, at the same time this movie is very disjointed, and maybe that's the point. So I'm gonna do my best to sort of stitch together all the messages and symbols and important details. Like the ancient Rome references, the original story this film is based on, Caesar's ability to stop time, the Hamlet monologue, the material of Megalon, the fallen statues, Vesta's virginity, Claudio and Wild Platinum's schemes, and the super symbolic ending, and many more details. So let's just jump right into this analysis. So before I get into the story of this film, to give you the best context to understand the film, I have to spend a little bit of time on Francis Ford Coppola's inspiration for this film, and the specific Roman story this movie is based on. I began to realize that America is ancient Rome today. America had been founded on Rome. We have a Senate, we don't have a king, we have Roman law. And then you look at New York. Grand Central Station looks like Rome. So I came up with this idea to make a movie where we are essentially New Rome. Coppola goes on to explain how also, just like ancient Rome, America is heading in a direction where we may fall into a similar economic despair and chaos that Rome did and lose our democracy. As Rome historically changed politically from the democratic Roman Republic to the fascist Roman Empire, and then, as we all know, eventually collapsed. So through Coppola's characters and setting in New Rome, he's replicating a lot of the historical figures in ancient Rome and blending the infrastructure and architecture of ancient Rome with modern New York, and making sure to include the overlapping issues between the two cities, as he mentions wealth inequality, rampant capitalism, and powerful leaders not serving on the promises that they made to the people who elected them. And to get even more specific about the inspiration, the story of this film is based on the historical event of the Catilinarian Conspiracy, when Lucius Catilina lost in an election to Marcus Cicero for Roman consul. The word got around that Catilina was conspiring to assassinate Cicero. But over time, with more historical insight and discussion, it seems to be a little more likely that Catilina's intentions weren't as threatening as we may have thought. And Cicero's eagerness to punish Catilina for the conspiracy was way too harsh and had selfish intentions behind it. Also, Cicero didn't fulfill many of the promises he made to the people who elected him when he became consul. And Catilina believed he would have been more selfless for his people had he been in power. So ultimately, Coppola, when directing this film, has based his main characters and story off of this historical Roman event, where almost identically his character Franklin Cicero is the selfish figure who is in power, and Caesar Catilina is the selfless figure who believes he would be more selfless and more giving if he were the one to be in power. So to get into the film itself, the very first scene starts with Caesar Catilina standing on the edge of a roof and stopping time. This is a supernatural ability he has somehow managed to acquire and harness with his own mind, which is extremely powerful. And this ability of Caesar's is inspired by Coppola's views on the potential of the human mind, as we hear him claim when he talks about his inspiration for the film. Why don't we ever say the truth, that we are a genius species, what we can do? The languages we speak, we have decoded the genome, we have learned how to resplice the genome. If we're really geniuses, which I'm sure we are, then there's nothing we can't solve. Caesar represents a form of humanity that believes completely in oneself and is able to access the true brilliance and maximum potential of the one-of-a-kind miracle that is the human mind. Therefore, he's capable of things mentally that no one else in this film is. He represents Coppola's vision of what humans could be and should be, since he is brilliant, kind-hearted, selfless, ambitious, and incredibly optimistic about the world and the people within it. This power also speaks to being able to achieve so much more within the time you have with this kind of mindset, almost as if time has stopped for you. His ultimate goal is to design and construct a new version of New Rome, Megalopolis, a utopia made out of Megalon. Megalon is this revolutionary bioadaptive material he believes can change the world. And this material or element, Megalon, is completely fictional, of course, but in this film it can be used to build the most complex structures and power the most advanced technology, similar to vibranium in the Marvel comics. It's very science fictional. But as we learn later on in the film, there's only one character in the movie who is immune to Caesar's time-stopping abilities and can witness him doing it. This is Julia, Cicero's daughter. This super early moment in the film during the teardown of the building actually ties in with the very end of the movie, which I will get into a lot later. But for now, I want to let you know that the reason why Julia is the only one who can see Caesar stop time is because she shares his level of open-mindedness and can access that level of potential within the human mind. even before she really knows it. She shares the same optimism, self-belief, and belief in others that Caesar has, so she's able to learn from Caesar in a way no one else can. This is the key reason why she very quickly finds herself gravitating towards him and decides to work for him, and eventually falls in love with him. This is also why we see throughout the film that she can see what he sees when it comes to his dreams for the future, his deepest thoughts, and his outlook on the current world. As we see, she has various glowing golden visions that match his. It's also the reason why she's been so rebellious against her father. She never really aligned with his traditional values. It's also why she sees her dad's desk tipping over in that golden vision. It's a symbolic outlook that she and Caesar both share. Cicero's leadership is symbolically unstable. Julia is also based on the real-life Tullia, the daughter of Marcus Cicero, who also had differences with and disapproval from her father when it came to the man she decided to marry. In a scene where Cicero is debuting a new casino building plan to the press, Caesar shows up and recites the famous Hamlet "to be or not to be" monologue. In the original monologue, Hamlet contemplates life and death, but Caesar, in the context of this film, is referring to the life of pushing ourselves towards a better world, versus a life of complacency with the ongoing wrongs and evils of our current world, which to Caesar is the same as death itself. And on top of this, to Caesar, this is the life that Cicero is leading his people into and keeping his people trapped in. These ongoings and evils are put on display shortly after when Caesar drives through the darker corners of the city with poverty, crime, violence, homelessness, and police brutality. In this moment, through Caesar's symbolic mind, we witness historical statues collapsing and falling to the ground, each representing the strength and integrity of the city having fallen apart. Most notably and most powerfully, the famous statue of Lady Justice. Lady Justice is meant to represent fairness with the scale, non-bias with the blindfold, and finality with the sword when assessing every criminal case that reaches the court. By dropping her scale and her sword, falling to the side of the building wall, feeling exhausted, it represents those values falling apart in society, as we see in the streets of this city. We also learn about a celebrity of New Rome who Caesar designs clothes for, using his advanced technology and genius innovation, like an invisible cloak dress using tiny dynamic cameras. She's celebrated for her talent, beauty, youth, and promised virginity. Her name is Vesta. Vesta is a reference to the Vestal virgins of ancient Rome and the goddess Vesta who they worship. They were highly regarded and respected virgin priestesses who dedicated their early life to studying religion and remaining pure. They were selected based on their beauty and reputation. Coppola is comparing this Roman value to American cultural value of respecting female performers who maintain their image of youth and innocence. Vesta's official promise of virginity is celebrated at Wow and Crassus' wedding to raise funds for donations to the city. And during this scene, we see Caesar leave the wedding to join this underground party where he's indulging in various drinks and drugs, and we experience this trip very much with him. His mind spins and circles around while the visual effects and the camera do the same thing. We learn he feels the need to momentarily escape the weight of his personal ambitions, the pressure from his contemporaries, and the disapproval from his ice-cold mother. We also hear him tap into his big picture thoughts when we hear him say, "When you leap into the unknown, you are truly free." And something along the lines of, if we created the gods, and the gods have limitless power, why can't we harness that same power? And of course, both quotes tie in with his wildly open mind and fearless ambition to better the future. Soon, and sadly enough, Claudio Pulcher, in an attempt to defame his cousin Caesar, who he's jealous of, presents footage of Caesar in bed with Vesta, which shocks everyone and ruins both their reputations momentarily. Claudio is based on Publius Clodius Pulcher, a politician known for his scheming antics, gaining the support of the poor and cultivating urban mobs, as he does very similarly in this movie. And if anyone's wondering why Claudio is dressing like a woman at this party, this actually wasn't uncommon in performances and events in ancient Rome. And historically, Claudius specifically dressed like a woman as a disguise to sneak into places where he shouldn't be. And later on, after this party, Vesta develops a completely different sex symbol image, which of course reflects how in our culture, it's no surprise when young stars make that sharp stylistic turn as soon as they mature, like Miley Cyrus, for example. When Caesar's released and he and Julia fall deeper in love, Claudio and Wow Platinum conspire to steal Crassus' wealth by freezing his accounts and taking over his business, and also plan to sabotage Caesar's career even further. Claudio's accomplice hires a kid to shoot Caesar in the head, and when Caesar is shot, he is saved by his own Megalon technology, which has the ability to regenerate his skin and organs. And everything starts to catch up to Wow and Claudio when Caesar returns with a new level of philosophy and motivation for his people. And this is fueled heavily by his even deeper love for his now wife Julia Julia and his new baby daughter, Sunny Hope. And Crassus catches up to Wow and Claudio's plan when, unbeknownst to us, he reveals a crossbow under his blanket, kills Wow, and shoots Claudio. Crassus is actually based on Marcus Licinius Crassus, a property investor in ancient Rome who was often called the richest man in Rome. And finally, when Caesar returns to the city after a big satellite crash has damaged a big part of New Rome, he gives this epic final speech which ties together all of the overarching symbols and themes that I've discussed throughout this entire video. He talks about the untapped potential of human intelligence, the collective optimism needed to move us together toward a utopia, the open-minded and selfless discussions between people who are truly seeking progress. This all ties in with the overarching theme of the miracle of human evolution and the progress of civilization, which is why we see the ape evolving into the human in the shadow on the building wall. And as Caesar says in the film, and as Coppola says in many of the interviews, the idea of utopia is not the perfect society. The true utopia is to have open-minded leaders and open-minded people who are willing to have discussions with the intention of helping others rather than helping themselves. And when I think about it, I think he's right. That would be a utopia, or at least the closest thing to utopia, because historically and currently, we've always had leaders who have personal intentions in mind. And at this point in the film, this speech has suddenly sparked a dramatic new belief in the people who have now actually turned on Claudio and have hung him upside down. Even Cicero has a newfound belief in Caesar after the speech. And in the final scene, flashing forward, Megalopolis has begun with all of the Megalon technology Caesar and Julia have always dreamed of. Julia achieves her ability to stop time, as she has always been on the path to do. And the only exception, as we see, to Julia's freeze in time is baby Sunny Hope, all symbolizing, especially with their name, a brighter future ahead with a brand new generation of brilliant, optimistic, selfless visionaries. All right, that's my analysis. I would love to hear what you think about this movie, especially even just your opinion of the movie, because I know it's been a very polarizing film. And of course, if you have any questions on the subject matter that you think I didn't answer, feel free to ask me and I'll answer them right away. Thank you so much for watching. See you later.